Just moments ago, a revelation shattered the silence of the palace walls. Princess Catherine has disclosed Queen Elizabeth's final, most intimate wish concerning Prince William and Prince Harry. A letter locked away for years, sealed by the Queen herself, has finally surfaced, and its contents have stunned the monarchy. What was meant to be a private dying wish may now spark a public reckoning no one expected. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The gravity of Catherine's announcement sent immediate shockwaves throughout the United Kingdom and far beyond. With the world still reeling from past fractures within the House of Windsor, few could have predicted that Queen Elizabeth, known for her stoicism, discretion, and fierce loyalty to tradition, had left behind a document so emotionally charged, so unapologetically honest. And yet, here it was, her final wish, committed to ink, hidden from the public eye and entrusted to a single individual, Princess Catherine. This wasn't a formal declaration filed among official documents. No, this was something far more intimate. A handwritten letter sealed in the Queen's personal stationery, her royal cipher pressed into wax like a final signature of her reign's conclusion. A letter that was meant to stay in the shadows. Until now, the content of this secret letter, according to palace insiders, directly addressed the aching chasm between Prince William and Prince Harry. What began as a series of disagreements had evolved into something far more volatile, an emotional battlefield with global consequences. And the Queen, in her twilight hours, was painfully aware of what the world refused to say out loud. The very survival of the monarchy depended on whether her grandsons would remain adversaries or find their way back to each other. But the letter wasn't merely a plea for reconciliation. It carried the weight of finality. It contained a directive, one that was sharp, calculated, and clear. The Queen's tone, according to those who've read the words, was one of heartbreak mixed with resolve. She did not ask for unity at any cost. She asked for truth, for accountability, for the crown to stand above emotion when necessary, but never beneath integrity. What's even more startling is how this letter remained hidden for so long. Royal courtiers and even senior aides had no knowledge of its existence. It wasn't found among the Queen's private documents after her death. It wasn't stored in the royal archives or registered in official channels. It had been passed directly to Catherine by hand just days before the Queen's passing. And for all this time, Catherine said nothing. She carried the burden through mourning, through national upheaval, through every public appearance where she stood beside William, knowing she held the final words of the Queen that could change everything. Why now? Why release it when the royal family was already standing on uneven ground? Some suggest it was a move of desperation. Others believe it was strategic. But those closest to Catherine whisper that this was never about ambition. It was about duty. The Queen had chosen her, not Charles, not Anne, not even William, to protect the truth until the time was right. And now that time has come, with the monarchy's foundations quivering beneath decades of quiet resentment and recent storms, Catherine made the choice to honour the Queen's final wish. A wish that wasn't just about mending relationships. It was about confronting them. It was about William stepping into the role the Queen saw for him, and Harry being forced to reckon with the crown he'd left behind. The public may never see the letter in full, but its message is already echoing through every royal hall, every newspaper headline, every whispered conversation. And the woman who was once simply seen as the Duchess of Cambridge has now emerged as the silent storm, who may very well reshape the future of the House of Windsor. But why was Catherine chosen as the keeper of this royal secret, and what made her break the silence now? For over a year, Princess Catherine carried the weight of the Queen's final words in silence. Behind every graceful appearance, there was a woman torn between loyalty to the crown and love for her fractured family. Now, for the first time, we uncover the emotional toll that secrecy took, and the moment Catherine decided she could no longer keep quiet. From the moment the Queen gently pressed the sealed envelope into Catherine's hands, everything changed. The solemn instruction was clear: protect these words until the time is right. That time, however, was left undefined. And so began Catherine's quiet torment, an internal war between duty and dread. She moved through royal engagements with poise, every smile a carefully constructed mask hiding the storm within. The world saw elegance. But behind palace doors, Catherine was unravelling, not because she doubted the Queen's intent, but because she feared the explosive consequences of revealing it. The silence was not just strategic, it was suffocating. Insiders now confirmed that during pivotal moments such as the Queen's memorial and the early coronation planning meetings, Catherine struggled to maintain composure. Those closest to her remember her disappearing between events, often in tears, clutching something tightly in her palm. They thought it was nerves. But in truth, it was the letter. Still sealed, still unread by anyone else. The weight of it grew heavier with every passing month, especially as tensions between William and Harry deepened, and the monarchy's fractures widened. Her role had shifted from royal consort to silent sentinel of the Queen's last truth. Hints had begun to slip through. Looking back, some of her carefully worded interviews now seemed to carry hidden meaning. When she spoke of the importance of remembering what we were entrusted with, or when she paused while referencing guidance from above, few realized these were coded reflections of the burden she bore. But inside the palace, whispers were growing louder. Charles, always sensitive to shifts in loyalty, reportedly questioned her distant behavior. Camilla, according to one source, grew suspicious of Catherine's frequent private meetings with Princess Anne. Anne was the only person Catherine trusted with the secret. The Queen's only daughter had long been a pillar of quiet strength, and she, too, had been known to protect truths that others couldn't stomach. Catherine didn't show her the letter, not yet, but she confided in Anne about the promise she had made and her fears of what the letter might do. Anne's advice was cold but clear. Hen, it threatens to burn your children. It's time to let it out. That time came when Catherine's worst fear came to life. A supposed accident, nothing confirmed, left Prince George briefly exposed to a horde of photographers after an internal security failure. What Catherine saw that day shattered her. Not just the chaos, but the look in George's eyes, confused, vulnerable, and betrayed by a system meant to protect him. That night, Catherine made her choice. The Queen's wish could no longer remain hidden. The world had to know. The family had to confront the truth. And she, whether praised or condemned, would be the one to deliver it. As Catherine's silence broke, the royal palace scrambled. But what exactly did the Queen's letter say? Buried beneath layers of royal diplomacy and decades of restraint was a monarch's unfiltered truth. Queen Elizabeth, known for her stoicism, left behind a message that defied expectations. Her final wish didn't call for unity, it demanded a reckoning between her grandsons. The letter, now read in hushed tones behind palace doors, carried none of the usual platitudes or cautious royal phrases. It was raw, direct, and hauntingly clear. The Queen, in her final days, had watched the unravelling of the House of Windsor, not just as a monarch, but as a grandmother. She saw the warmth that once defined William and Harry turn into cold avoidance, public distance, and bitter undertones. And so, in what many now call her most daring act of truth, she asked for something few thought she ever would. She asked William to forgive but never to forget, not to heal blindly but to remember, to understand that love, when used without wisdom, could jeopardize every thing the monarchy stood for. The heartbreak in her words was undeniable. She wrote of Harry's choices not with anger, but with quiet devastation. She spoke of her disappointment, not because he left royal duties behind, but because of how he did it. She saw the press wars, the televised interviews, the lines drawn between family and fame, and while she did not mention Meghan by name, the message was unmistakable. She referred to external influences that manipulated emotions and distorted truth, and she warned of charm used to fracture instead of unify. Her restraint broke only once in that context, when she described the need to shield the institution from those who do not understand its burden but crave its power. But perhaps the most unexpected revelation came when she named Catherine plainly, and without ceremony, as the stabilizing force of our future. In a family teeming with hierarchy, tradition, and internal politics, This line felt like a thunderclap. It wasn't simply praise. It was instruction, an anointing of sorts. Catherine wasn't just William's wife, she was the foundation upon which the Queen hoped the next generation would build. A woman who had endured the pressure, the scrutiny, the silence, and still stood loyal to both her husband and the crown. The final part of the letter didn't soften, it hardened. The Queen did not request reconciliation, she demanded confrontation, but only under her terms. She insisted on a final meeting between William and Harry, not in public, not mediated by staff or press, but in private, under the shadow of Windsor, where truths could be spoken without the world watching. A space where Harry would be asked not only to list, but to answer. Where William would not just speak but decide. It was a challenge masked as a wish, a command born from love but sharpened by experience. For Queen Elizabeth knew what many around her refused to see: some rifts can only be healed by facing the fire, not fleeing from it. The Queen's words were meant to heal, but inside the palace they tore open old wounds, especially for King Charles. Behind closed doors, King Charles's reaction was anything but composed. Sources reveal the monarch was blindsided, not just by the content of the letter, but by Catherine's timing. Had the balance of royal power just shifted under his feet? The Queen's final wish wasn't meant to surface like this, not while Charles was still navigating the fragile threads of his reign. The letter, in all its brutal clarity, struck him not only as a challenge to his authority but as a direct blow to the image he had worked tirelessly to craft. His mother, in her final act, had not entrusted him with this vital message. She had passed it to Catherine, not her son, not the reigning monarch. That detail alone, whispered in darkened corners of the palace, became a source of deep humiliation. The Queen's deliberate bypass wasn't just a gesture, it was a statement, and Charles felt it in his bones. Sources closest to the king claim his first instinct was to order the letter retracted, or at the very least, have it declared private once again. He wanted it sealed, silenced, erased from public memory. But the damage had already been done, and Catherine was not backing down. Those who witnessed the fallout describe an atmosphere so tense, even longtime courtiers tread carefully. One insider revealed a private encounter between Charles and Catherine that reportedly escalated beyond protocol. The king, shaken and irate, confronted her not as daughter-in-law but as adversary. Catherine, firm and unapologetic, held her ground. She repeated only one line, calmly but with unmistakable resolve. I am honoring her voice when others tried to quiet it. The room, they say, fell into an icy silence. The confrontation marked a turning point, one that rattled more than just egos. It exposed fractures that could no longer be masked by smiles and staged appearances. Camilla, too, was said to be deeply unsettled. Though never named in the Queen's letter, many within the palace interpreted the phrasing as a subtle rebuke of her growing influence. The Queen's sharp distinction between those who uphold the institution and those who reshape it for convenience was read by some as a quiet warning. Camilla allegedly took it as a personal slight, one that cast shadows over her role in the new regime. She viewed Catherine's move as theatrical and divisive, designed to undermine the monarchy's current path. And yet those in Catherine's camp argued the opposite. It was a course correction, not a mutiny. In the days that followed, the palace split into two silent camps. One stood behind Charles, determined to preserve order and legacy. The other quietly rallied around Catherine, believing that honouring the Queen's final request was the only path forward. Between them stood Prince William, caught in a storm of loyalty, legacy, and leadership. Charles, desperate to secure his grasp, called his son to a private meeting at Clarence House. The discussion was said to be short, clipped, and emotionally charged. By the end, doors were reportedly slammed loud enough to echo down the hall. No official statement followed, only silence. And in that silence, something irreversible had shifted. As the monarch scrambled to regain control, someone else stepped into the spotlight: Prince William, with a decision that would stun the realm. In a move that shocked his inner circle, Prince William didn't hesitate. With his mother's words echoing in his heart and Catherine by his side, he declared he was ready to step beyond the title of heir and become the leader the Queen envisioned. No more waiting in the wings, no more silent compliance. William, fueled by the raw emotion stirred by his grandmother's final letter, took a step that sent a jolt through the foundation of the monarchy. He called an emergency family council without the king's permission. And not just a symbolic gathering. This was a closed-door meeting with key members of the House of Windsor, summoned to hear him speak not as the future king, but as the voice of the Queen's legacy. Those present described the moment as nothing short of seismic. Calm but commanding, William addressed the Queen's final words head-on, referring to himself, for the first time, as the guardian of her legacy. He didn't ask for approval. He demanded action. The Queen had laid out a path. William was going to follow it with or without consensus. At every meeting, Catherine sat at his side. She was not a silent consort. She was his strategist, his anchor. And while most royals understood her place, there was one who did not. Camilla. Reports quickly surfaced that she protested Catherine's presence in high-level internal briefings, insisting it was inappropriate for someone not yet crowned to wield such visible power. But William refused to back down. Catherine remained in every room, her presence signalling a shift in hierarchy that was as deliberate as it was symbolic. William was not just stepping up, he was drawing battle lines. And the Queen's letter was his shield. Behind the scenes, he made another bold move. He reopened private lines of communication with his brother. Not through aides, not through media. Directly. But notably, Meghan was left out. Sources close to the matter suggest William made it clear. The Queen's letter was a family matter, not a platform for broader negotiation. The decision to exclude her sent waves of speculation across royal watchers and insiders alike. Some saw it as strategic, others deeply personal. But no one could ignore the message it was time to speak as brothers, not brands. Caught off guard, the royal press office remained frozen. No statements, no spin, no palace protocol to lean on. William had outpaced them all. And then came the instruction that no one saw coming. He allegedly ordered palace staff to begin drafting what he called a transition document, though its contents remain locked away. Whispers suggest it outlines a radical restructuring of internal leadership, one that would place William in direct oversight of long-guarded royal operations, bypassing Charles's grip on key decisions. A move many feared, and others welcomed. This wasn't rebellion, it was assertion. The heir had stopped waiting for permission. He was acting on principle, on duty, and above all, on the final wish of a queen who had trusted him more than anyone else. The monarchy, once quiet and calculating, was now ablaze with momentum. But not everyone was moving in sync. One voice remained absent. One figure lingered in the shadows. The world turned its gaze across the ocean, wondering what he would do next. But while William made moves in the open, Harry's reaction was quiet, too quiet. Until now, when the world expected a fiery response, Prince Harry offered only silence. But beneath that silence was a storm brewing, one that insiders claim could bring the monarchy to its knees. What was Harry planning behind the scenes, and why did it involve an American legal team? For days there was nothing. No statement, no interview, no leak. Not even a whisper from Montecito. Prince Harry vanished from the media glare just as headlines exploded with Queen Elizabeth's final letter. His silence wasn't interpreted as peace. It was interpreted as calculation. Those closest to him reportedly grew concerned. Aides who had long been his voice to the press admitted they were cut off, as if Harry was intentionally isolating himself from the usual machinery. But behind this quiet was a man watching, analysing, deciding. And when the news reached him that the Queen's letter not only named William as her chosen guardian, but made no mention of Meghan, everything changed. According to sources inside the Sussex Circle, Meghan was furious. She believed the letter's indirect references to external influence were thinly veiled jabs meant to undermine her. And worse, that Catherine, her longtime counterpart, was now being elevated publicly in ways that left her erased. Behind palace walls, the Queen's words were seen as defining, but from California, they were viewed as betrayal wrapped in tradition. The tension between personal pain and public duty exploded behind closed doors, and it was Harry who stood at the center of it again, forced to choose between his past and his present. Rumors began to swirl quietly at first. a name on a legal docket, a visit to a discreet office in Los Angeles. Then whispers became louder. Harry had begun consulting legal experts on matters relating to his titles and his remaining ties to the monarchy. Advisors feared he was exploring the nuclear option, abandoning his dukedom altogether, or, more dramatically, suing for financial and legal separation from royal trusts. These weren't idle threats. They were strategic moves, echoing the tone of a man who'd said, "Behind closed doors, if this is how they want it, I'll finish it." But the most chilling revelation came when reports surfaced of a secret, unscheduled trip to Scotland. A grainy photo, quickly pulled from circulation, appeared to show Harry at a quiet estate connected to Balmoral. No staff, no entourage. Just Harry and what one insider claimed was a locked case containing voice recordings. Recordings that, if true, could reshape the narrative entirely. The source insisted that during his final visit with the Queen before her death, Harry had recorded key portions of their conversation. A precaution, he allegedly said, to protect the truth. Until now, they had never been mentioned, but with the Queen's letter now public and his role within it minimized, those recordings were no longer just memories. They were leverage. And so, while the palace prepared for backlash and William forged forward with his new mantle, Harry stood at the edge of the storm, holding cards no one knew he had. Silence, it turns out, wasn't surrender. It was a warning, and that warning was about to become something far more dangerous until fate intervened, and just when the storm seemed ready to break, a ghost from the past returned to shift the tide completely. It was the one name neither side wanted spoken, but one Catherine could no longer ignore. Diana. As the Queen's final wish reignited family wars, Catherine invoked the memory of the woman who changed the monarchy forever. What she revealed next stunned even William. For years, a secret had rested quietly within Catherine's private belongings, a letter, written by Diana, handed to her in the final days before her wedding. Sealed, personal, and untouched by palace staff, it was meant as a private guide from one woman to another. But now, with the royal family fractured and Queen Elizabeth's letter threatening to combust decades of unresolved pain, Catherine knew the moment had come. During a quiet gathering of senior royals, a room already heavy with mistrust and unspoken grievances, Catherine reached into her handbag and laid the envelope on the table. Silence followed. Even Charles, usually quick to interject, said nothing. She looked only at William and whispered, "It's time." The contents of Diana's letter were never meant for public consumption, but parts of it were read aloud that day, and those present described it as soul-shattering. The words were simple, but the message was devastating. Diana warned, "If they ever divide you and Harry, it won't be by accident. It will be by design." That single sentence shattered any illusion that the rift between the brothers had evolved naturally. Diana had seen the patterns forming long before her sons had. She had predicted the internal forces, the courtiers, the strategists, even members of the family, who might one day pit them against each other for power, perception, or control. William read the letter himself, his voice steady at first, then breaking. One aide claimed that midway through, he paused for nearly a full minute, unable to continue. Others in the room, hardened by years of royal protocol, were reportedly moved to tears. The parallels between the past and the present were too stark to ignore. Just as Diana had been cast out for disrupting the system, now her sons had become pawns in a newer, colder game, one where silence was weaponized, alliances were temporary, and even the memory of the Queen was being debated like a political tool. But Catherine didn't share the letter just for reflection. She shared it as proof that this wasn't just about William versus Harry, it was about history repeating itself. She insisted that both Queen Elizabeth and Diana wanted reconciliation, but not at the expense of truth, not at the cost of blindly forgiving those who manipulated from the shadows, and not if that peace meant silencing the very voices that had once cried out for change. Most hauntingly, Diana's letter didn't portray Harry as a villain. Quite the opposite. It painted him as a test of loyalty, of strength, of whether William could stay true to their shared past, even when the institution demanded otherwise. The message was clear. The monarchy would not survive another generation of denial. It needed to face the pain it buried. and it needed to choose who it would be before that choice was made for it. But this wasn't just about brothers anymore. It was about the survival of the monarchy itself. Behind palace walls, alliances were being redrawn, and at the centre of a silent pact was a trio no one saw coming: Princess Catherine, Princess Anne, and Lady Louise. Together, they laid the foundation for a crown built not on blood, but on vision. In the weeks before Catherine unveiled the Queen's final letter, something unexpected was already taking shape in the background. Quiet meetings, unscheduled visits, no press, no official calendar entries, just whispered consultations between the monarchy's most underestimated forces. It began with Catherine reaching out to Anne Long, regarded as the steadiest royal, loyal to the institution, but unafraid to speak truth where others flinched. The two met under the guise of routine royal business, but what transpired was anything but ordinary. Catherine revealed the existence of the Queen's letter, not the full contents, but enough to signal what was coming. Anne didn't flinch, she listened. And when Catherine finished, Anne gave a simple warning: Charles won't accept it. Not if it threatens the system he's built. It wasn't disapproval, it was preparation. Anne wasn't just giving permission, she was giving strategy. But there was a third chair at the table, one no one had noticed before. Lady Louise Windsor, young, quiet, dismissed by many as peripheral to the core of royal power. But that was exactly why she mattered. Catherine and Anne recognized something in her that others overlooked: independence, a sense of duty unclouded by ego. Anne, who had mentored Louise from a distance, saw in her the future the monarchy desperately needed, unbound by scandal, untouched by entitlement. In hushed tones, they began calling her the safeguard. Not the next monarch, but the protector of what must remain intact when others sought to tear it down or twist it to fit their narrative. The pact they formed was deliberate. It wasn't built on sentiment. It was built on structure. Protect George, Charlotte, and Louis at all costs. Shield them from the internal wars now raging behind the palace walls. And most importantly, redefine succession not merely by birthright, but by capability, clarity, and conscience. Together, the three women crafted a set of private principles, a quiet constitution. Within that framework, they developed internal checks that would, over time, reduce Camilla's sway over succession discussions. No public declarations, just red tape, legal language, procedural walls, all wrapped in the appearance of ordinary royal business. But one move stood out among them all. Anne, in an unprecedented step, signed a confidential document, allegedly drafted with the help of a retired constitutional advisor, laying out an alternative interpretation of royal succession protocol. The document didn't dethrone Charles, it didn't name a new monarch, but it did outline what Anne called emergency custodial authority over future heirs, should the reigning monarch's decisions threaten the crown's long-term survival. A safeguard clause, a contingency. And the moment her signature dried, history quietly bent toward a different direction. This wasn't rebellion, it was succession by design. Strategic, silent, surgical. And it wasn't finished yet. Because while the monarchy's inner circle scrambled to contain what they thought was a leak, Catherine was preparing for something far bigger. Her next move wouldn't just challenge the present, it would define the legacy of everyone left standing. But as the final chess pieces were moved, Catherine prepared for the moment she knew would redefine everything. The world watched as Catherine stepped onto the palace steps, flanked by silence, not ceremony. With eyes full of quiet fire and heart heavy with generations of history, she delivered the words Queen Elizabeth had once whispered in private, now echoed for all to hear. There was no crown upon her head, no royal fanfare or golden carriage, just the unshakable presence of a woman who had seen too much and waited too long. In a voice that trembled not from fear but from fierce purpose, Catherine addressed the nation and the Commonwealth with the same composure she had shown when carrying the Queen's secret for over a year. Her statement had been prepared in absolute secrecy. Not even Charles had seen its final draft. But what mattered most was not what Catherine read from the paper in her hands, it was what came from the conviction in her voice. She confirmed without hesitation that Queen Elizabeth had entrusted her with a final wish, a wish not buried in tradition but carved in clarity, to confront the fracture within the family before it consumed the crown entirely. Catherine did not deflect or diminish, she did not point fingers, but she also didn't sugarcoat the truth. She admitted the burden the Queen had left her with. She explained that the choice to finally reveal the letter had not come from anger but from necessity. In her words, "There comes a time when silence protects no one and truth, though uncomfortable, becomes the only form of loyalty." With that, she honoured both her late grandmother-in-law and the role she herself now embodied, not as a figurehead in waiting, but as a protector of the crown's soul. She called for healing, but made no apologies for the reckoning it had taken to get there. Her voice cracked only once when speaking of her children. Catherine spoke not as a royal but as a mother. "I will not let them inherit a kingdom fractured by silence and fear," she said, pausing as the weight of those words fell upon the world. Behind her, William stood still, stoic, but his eyes betrayed the storm inside. This was no political speech. This was a declaration, a warning, a turning point, one that he supported fully publicly and without reservation. The reaction was instant. The press scrambled to frame it, some calling her bold and visionary, others branding her reckless and divisive. Social media ignited with debate, admiration, fury, and confusion. But one thing was universally agreed upon: nothing like this had ever happened before. A royal woman, standing without official title or sovereign authority, had just changed the course of the monarchy, and she had done it not through decree, but through truth. No longer just the Duchess of Cambridge, no longer just the Princess of Wales. Catherine had become the voice of a legacy, one that was no longer content to whisper behind closed doors. As the echoes of Queen Elizabeth's words ripple across the globe, one question remains: has Catherine just secured the monarchy's future, or lit the fuse that will blow it apart? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.